Welcome back to the show. Today we have Bob Fitz. He's founder and producer at SUPX, the Startup Expo. Bob, welcome back to the show.
Kevin, great to be here. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. Actually, your radio shows are some of the most popular shows I've ever done. So I thought, now that I'm doing TV, let's have you on the show. And I think we picked a really good topic because we were going to cover how to kind of network on and offline. And I remember the exact moment that you and I met. I was working a trade show in San Francisco, and I got this LinkedIn request from you. And I looked at it and I said, oh, interesting. And you've done so many great things over your career. And if you want to check that out and get more kind of about Bob's background, you can go to buildingthefutureshow.com and listen to his 2 other interviews I've done with him. But the interesting thing is I reached out to you and I said, you love your background. I'm going to be recording this radio show. Would you like to do the show? And I hadn't even recorded a single episode. And you and I got on a call and we chatted. And then you talked about SUP-X, and we'll get into exactly what that is in a second. And then we ended up meeting in person. And in the meantime, we were I had you on the show a couple of times. And, we ended up meeting in person down in Florida last February. And so maybe kind of before we cover a little bit more than that, what exactly is SUP-X?
So SUP-X or SUP-X is what I call it, but
okay.
People call it a little bit of everything. It's SUP-X, the Startup Expo, is a 2-day international startup and early stage conference that's in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. For people who don't know, that's about 20 miles north of Miami.
Sure.
And it's at the convention center there. We have most of the 3rd floor. It's an enormous amount of space. And it's a 2-day event, as I said. The first day is we start off with a diversity forum, and then we have workshops all afternoon for startups primarily. They're really deep dive. Then that's a really long day. It's a lot of learning, and so we have a big opening party in the exhibit hall. And then the next day is a traditional conference with panels and speakers and keynotes and that kind of stuff. We should have around 1,300 to 1,500 people this year from probably 3 dozen states and provinces and pushing 15, 16 countries. We're growing
awesome.
Thank you. We're growing at about 60% a year, and this will be our 4th year. So it is a fun event. It's not super expensive like most conferences are because the focus of our event is the entrepreneur. So we purposely price it to make accessible to startups from Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia, or even Edmonton. So you can get a general admission ticket for as low as $99, and VIP tickets are more expensive. But
sure.
But even they aren't prohibitively expensive. So
sure. No, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say it's a really fun event. I mean, I know I'm prejudiced; it's my event, but I go to these events all the time, so I kind of know what I like and what I don't like.
Sure.
And we focus a lot on content.
Yeah.
Our philosophy is you could do this in a barn with a keg if you had 4 or 5 speakers. So we try to do more than that, obviously. We have about 50 good speakers. They're from all over the U.S. and Canada. And we believe that if you really focus on quality content and make it a real great learning experience, good people will come, and then that'll make it a fantastic networking opportunity for people, which is we're going to talk a little bit about networking today.
Sure. And if people want more information about the conference, what's the URL they can check out?
So it's SUP-X.org, SUP-X.org.
Perfect. Yeah, and just kind of a shout out to you about that and kind of the topic of the show. I've been to many conferences over my career, and I've never been to a conference where networking in person was so great. Like it was almost like you just made eye contact with somebody and we were like one of you was introducing the other to the other person, and it was phenomenal for that, right? And basically there was people that I met there in person that I just finished interviewing a month ago, and it's September and it was in February, right? So I met a ton of people there and it was great, right? And I've kept in touch with a lot of them as well, like yourself and whatnot. But maybe let's kind of start with maybe kind of what you found worked for you in the online networking space.
So, look, I'm 52, so
okay.
I don't do a lot of Instagram, and we do Twitter, but I don't use Twitter as kind of a networking tool. I use it as a communication tool. So for me, at least, and maybe this is speaking generationally, I'm a LinkedIn junkie.
Sure.
And I wasn't until 3 or 4 years ago when I came up with this event. And the way I use it is to try to build a broad network. Now, first of all, there are a lot of ways to use LinkedIn. So I'm going to talk about a way that I use it, but
Okay.
it's not appropriate for everybody. And sometimes, some people are very possessive about their contact networks. They will not connect with anybody unless they've met them in person.
Mm-hmm.
That is fine. I mean, and you'll find that particularly more with higher level service professions, so accountants, lawyers, and stuff like that, and others. But some people are very protective of their networks. I totally get it. I am not.
I'm the same way.
I have nearly 30,000 LinkedIn connections.
That's awesome.
But again, I think it's a function of how you want to use it. I'm using it to create a broad community to help me talk to people about my event. Other people will control their networks and interact with people based on how they intend on using it. It's all fine.
Sure.
So that's kind of context. Now, for my purposes, let me back up a step and say, first of all, before you contact anybody on LinkedIn, have a decent profile.
Fair. Yeah. That's really good advice.
Yeah, have a decent profile. Make sure it's well written, and learn some tips like, how you write your description. It's limiting, but you can trick LinkedIn and change how you word things so that the first thing someone sees about you is the most important thing you want it to say.
Totally.
And if you play around with it and then go look at your profile, you'll start to learn what I'm talking about how to put the words that describe you better than LinkedIn wants to box you by saying what your current profession is. You can overwrite that in your profile. So that, and that's your eye grabber. Also, have a really good picture. I mean, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to go get a headshot, but, don't have the one where it looks like, your girlfriend or your, buddy has been, you've got your arm around them at a kegger, like, have a pretty decent looking one, so that, and always have a picture. There are statistics that show, I don't know what it is, but it's a crazy number of how many have the multiples of more people that will connect with you if you have a nice, friendly picture than one that don't. I mean, it's pretty commonsensical, but you'd be surprised how many people don't do this.
Yeah, you're right.
And without a picture, it's pretty much a deal stopper. So the other thing is that, when I don't just go, there's certain areas of LinkedIn that gives you options to, they'll give you a whole page and you hit connect to connect with people. Don't do that. First of all, if more than 3 of those people say that they've never heard of you, you'll be put in LinkedIn's penalty box. It's 3 or 5. It's an amazingly low number, and then you'll have difficult connecting with anybody. So the technique I use is go to their people you may know section, which is essentially an algorithm that LinkedIn uses suggests to people that they may know. And you'll see all these faces, and then you can click on the face, and then instead of just hitting connect beneath their name, again, that 3 to 5 person limit can put you in the penalty box. Go in, hit their profile, and where that connect button is, hit that connect, and it asks you how you know them. And there's like 8 or 9, it's like a drop down. There's like 8 or 9 categories. And I say that I know them because I'm about to. And then the key thing is write a personalized note. Now, I have a stock note that I use. It's like, dear, it's not a form letter because I send it each time, but I keep a paragraph.
Okay.
There's only like 200 characters you're allowed to use. It's not quite as short as Twitter, but almost. I have a stock paragraph or so that I use, and it says dear, and then I stop and write in their name. We share. I put in the number, X number of connections, and common interest in startups or the venture capital community, whatever it is you're trying to address a connection with.
Sure.
And say, may I add you to my network, please, and then sign your name and put your title or whatever. I mean, you'll be surprised that lots of people won't respond. I have tons of people that do respond. I have even people that respond and say, that's the nicest connection request I've ever received because, you might say, well, that's a slow technique. Well, if you go in and hit the copy function and each time you do it, just hit Control V and then take the time to write it. Yes, it might seem slower on the front end, but the efficiency rate in terms of the number of connections versus time you're on LinkedIn, I can't tell you how much higher it is. In using that technique, I went from about, I don't know, 2,000 LinkedIn connections to 29,000 something in less than 4 years. Now, I invested more time than most people do, but the point is that personalization pays off in droves.
Yeah. No,
So,
that makes a lot of sense. And I kind of do something similar in the same respect. I'm not at 29,000. I think I just broke 15,000 or something not that long ago. But I do something similar to that. And I think the real value that I've found in LinkedIn is, well, I've been able to connect with people globally, right? And the crazy thing about it is I got a book deal through connecting through LinkedIn. I got the radio show through connecting through LinkedIn. Like you and I met, like I've gotten a handful of things just by connecting with people on social media. And a lot of them I've never actually met in person, but it doesn't really matter, right? Anymore.
Look, people behave different ways on LinkedIn, just like they behave different ways, period.
Sure.
And
That's fair.
so, it is amazing. First of all, I'm always impressed in life, much less LinkedIn, with how incredibly nice people are and how incredibly rude people are. It never ceases to me. Neither end of the spectrum never ceases to amaze me. But in turn, our conference, for instance, we're a startup ourselves. We've been doing this conference for about 4 years, and we have pretty good attendance, and we're growing quickly. But we don't have the budget to pay big name speakers, so we have to work a lot harder to find really good people. Over 60% of our speakers are from outside of Florida, and we don't pay them a dime. We don't even cover their expenses. Every one of those people I met through LinkedIn, and it was asking. Now I do so the people you may know thing. I go in and look at those that I share probably a minimum of 25 connections with.
Okay.
And I look at their profile. I do take the time to look at it, and if I think, well, there's common interest here. We're both focused on startup, early stage businesses, or angel or VC or seed series investing. Then I know we have something in common. So my stock paragraph should resonate with them.
Sure.
But it takes time. But then you meet people all over, and then once they figure out, that you have some bona fides and that you do something that's interesting to them, a lot more people are willing to at least connect with you than you realize. And great things like have happened to you or happened to me by meeting people. I know people all over the world now. It's really cool. The one thing that I will say is behave.
Yeah,
Don't connect. And the people that are listening to this are going to hear it from different ways. And I'm quite certain that somebody in your network listening to this is a biz dev guy for an early stage company. And, he's going to go start using the techniques we're talking about, connect with somebody. And then as soon as he sends it, instantly somebody connects, they send like a request for business. Do not do that. That's an excellent way to have the person go back into his contacts and delete you. Like, be cool. I mean, you met somebody. It's okay if you later want to talk to them, but don't do it like immediately. The other thing that I'll tell people, and some people don't know this and other people do, is that you can download all of your contact information from LinkedIn.
Sure.
Go into your connections and hit settings, and it'll let you export your database. Now, it's not a particularly good database, and a lot of the email addresses that are available in there are kind of an alternative, a secondary email, but you can develop a pretty good database of contacts through your LinkedIn database. So I use it religiously. It takes a lot of work and takes a lot of patience. Occasionally, LinkedIn will tell you that you've misbehaved and you might have to correct that or do something. But for the most part, it's pretty good, and they will cap you out at 30,000 people. So yep. I've been warned.
What are you going to do at that point?
I think realistically, it's a good question. At that point, I'll probably go back in and start deleting people that I've decided that, I don't have a meaningful, I don't have a good enough reason to stay connected to them.
Fair enough.
So I'll just start editing them out. What happens, by the way, after that is that you become like an influencer, and people can follow you, but you can't get added to their network, and that might be fine too. I don't know.
Fair enough. Okay, I'm curious then, because like we kind of covered earlier, is your event. Startup Expo, for me anyway, was the best in-person networking event I've ever been to. So I'm kind of curious to know about what you do kind of in person for networking.
Well, I think it's important for in-person networking for a couple of things. One, I think people are under the misconception that everybody has to be some kind of backslapper to go to an event, and that they could walk out with a haul of like 50 cards, and that's how everybody's supposed to be. And I'm not a shy person, but if you go into a new event and you walk in and there's, I don't know which is worse, a room with 20 people in it or a room with 200, if you get my point.
Fair enough, yeah.
But you walk into a room and you don't know many people, it's the first time, it's a little intimidating for people who are outgoing or not outgoing. I think you need to have realistic expectations. I used to think 4 or 5 years ago that if I didn't go out and get 20 or 30 cards that I was a failure. I think what you start to realize is if you walk out with maybe 4 to 6 cards and you had a reasonably good conversation in the hour-long networking period before, say, the content of some meetup or something, that's pretty good.
Totally.
You're not going to meet the whole world, and don't feel like you have to. Now, other events, and as you get better or whatever, you might go faster, but be easy on yourself. Don't feel like everybody has to be, Mr. Charisma. Other things are that help it make it easier, particularly if you're uncomfortable or you might be a little shy. Stand near the bar.
That's fair.
Stand within about 3 or 4 paces of the bar. Even if you don't drink, have a drink in your hand. And catch eye contact and just say, "Hey, how are you?" And most people at a networking event, they're there to network too. So they're more open to reciprocating and being conversational there than they would most places. They'll be friendlier because they're there to try to meet people. They know how the networking game works. They know that you never know who you can meet and who they might know, and maybe you could be a partner or a client. There's all kinds of things that can happen. So people are pretty receptive. So realize that they are, and be realistic, stand in a good place. Have 2 or 3 icebreaker questions in your pocket. It's okay. The other person might be willing to engage, but they also might be a little shy about the situation, maybe not in person too. So just ask them, what brings you to the event tonight?
Okay. Simple icebreaker kind of questions.
They don't have to be like, what's pie? I mean, it's just, it's just, it can be a relatively innocuous icebreaker, and it can be kind of, it doesn't have to be rocket science, just something to help both of you kind of get into it. What brings you to this event? Have you come to several of them before? Oh, are you into startups or whatever the general thing is?
Sure.
Now, that's kind of general. The other thing is that if you have more targeted networking, let's say that you're in a startup and you go to a panel, and
Okay.
if the organization, probably on their event page or something, they're going to list who the panelists are, maybe go and look at their LinkedIn profile ahead of time and get a sense of who is who on the panel, so you know who to approach and maybe try to stand next to the stage afterwards and get their card, instead of standing in that line of people and end up, you meet somebody and it was a total waste of 20 minutes because it wasn't exactly what you thought. Do your research on people. If they're going to be up there. Plus, if you've done your research, you might have a more insightful way of engaging in a dialogue with them that'll make you more interested to talk to them. I'm sorry all this stuff is incredibly obvious, but what happens, I think, sometimes is people get nervous in these social situations and kind of forget the obvious, and then they blow their chances. So
I don't think it's really obvious. I think it sounds obvious when you say it, but I don't think it's that obvious, right? Because I think most people are really scared to network, and myself included. Like, part of the reason I wanted to do the radio show was to get over my own fear of public speaking, right? So, and I remember one guy early on that I had on the show. He's been wildly successful, and we were having a pre-interview call, and he tried to sell me for like 20 minutes why he should be on the show, and I was just on the other line, like sitting there listening to him, and I just felt like saying to him, dude, you were on the show before we even started this call. Like, I'm just like mind boggled that we're even having this conversation, right? And so I think everybody's kind of insecure, right? No matter how successful you have or haven't been. My experience.
No. You just said exactly what I was getting ready to say. Is
okay.
that
sorry.
people are no, it's good because it means that it's, more people think this, and should know that most people are more shy than you think they are.
Totally.
I'm an outgoing person, but it can be intimidating to go to an event that I've never gone to before. Now, if you go to them 3 and 4 times, you meet 2 the first time and 3 the second and 4 the third and whatever that is, by the 4th or 5th meeting, a dozen people, then at least you got a dozen people to talk to. But that first time is pretty intimidated for almost anybody, unless you bring a wingman,
Sure.
unless you bring somebody to kind of help you. And that's also another good technique, by the way. But just don't make the mistake I see a lot of people do, and that is they walk in with somebody, and then the 2 of them grab a drink and talk to each other the whole time.
Yeah, fair.
It's like, okay, what was the point? Like, why did you come here? Why don't you 2 just go to a bar and watch a football game? So, don't go to a networking event and then hang out with your boss and your colleagues or something. Like, go, and that's the other thing we haven't talked about. Have a purpose. Like if you know the subject of an event, like I went to an event the other night, and the reason I went was because there were 2 companies sponsoring it that I was trying to make a connection with to hopefully be a sponsor at my event. So I knew I'd see other people and enjoy meeting them, but my mission was I want to meet somehow those 2 sponsors from these 2 big companies, and I figured out a way to do it, but I had a purpose.
Sure.
Besides having fun, and I learned and met other people, but I wanted to make sure that if nothing else happened that night, that would happen. So, give yourself a reasonable goal. Don't expect that you have to meet the world, and use some icebreakers. Have a drink. It'll relax you and probably everybody around you. and research the people that are on the stage.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's actually really good advice kind of for both kind of on and offline networking. But we're kind of coming to the end of the show. So maybe let's close the show with mentioning where people can get more information about the event and any other links you want to mention.
Sure. So SUP-X.org, SUPX, the Startup Expo. It's 2 days. It's March 6th and 7th in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, which, while the rest of the world will be freezing, will probably be about 78 degrees. So there are worse places to be.
Sure.
And there's a reason the conference is that time of year. And that's how they can learn more. It's a good event, 1,500 people from all over the U.S. and Canada and beyond. And fortunately, we'll get to see you here again this year, totally. And that'll be great as always.
Yeah, looking forward to it, Bob. Well, thanks again for doing it. I look forward to keeping in touch with you again, and I'm sure we'll do another show at some point.
That's awesome. Always my pleasure, Kevin.
All right, man. Well, you have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk soon.
That's great. Take care.
Okay, bye.